That has to be one hell of a sending. How do you send sin? Again, I don't know how to send anybody. She knows, though. And there goes Orin. We knew it had to happen.
Don't stop.
But
It's all right. It's been long enough. This is your world now.
Down goes Orin. But we've won. We defeated sin. We found a way.
Yuna, I have to go. I'm sorry I couldn't show you Xanarkand. Goodbye.
Hey!
we're gonna see you again. time.
Everyone has lost something precious. Everyone here has lost homes, dreams, and friends. Everybody? Now, Sin is finally dead. Now, Spira is ours again. Working together. Now we can make new homes for ourselves. And new dreams. Although I know the journey will be hard, we have lots of time. Together, we will rebuild Spira. The road is ahead of us, so let's start out today. Just one more thing. The people and the friends that we have lost, no dreams that have faded. Never forget them.
And that's the game. I apologize that I'm going to have to talk over this great ending end credits song, but I'm going to have to talk about it because I'm going to talk about the game as a whole. This game is a lot of fun, which is a little strange for me to say because this is a game primarily built around the concepts of secrets, depression, and death. That seems to be the major thematic qualities that the game is built around. So it's hard for me to say that this game is fun, but the game is fun, and I think that has a lot to do with the battle system, which I think is amongst my favorite in any RPG as a whole. I love the battle system in this game. I love that they give me time to plan things. I love that they give me a list of who gets their turn in what order. I love that the status effects are very useful throughout the entire game. From beginning to end, status effects are almost vital for you to win. And that's the first time in Final Fantasy history that I would say that exists. In other games, you can kind of avoid those status effects, but in this game, you cannot avoid status effects. It's not just, status effects aren't just things that you need to cure, they are things that you need to be aware of. On the downside of it though, there are just too many status effects, right? And it's hard for me to keep track. You might have seen me just kind of going, what is this guy weak to? And I'm going through the list and there's probably about 20 status effects. It is so difficult to keep track of every enemy, what they're weak to, what they're not weak to. If you combine that with all the breaks and the delays versus slow and stop and all that kind of stuff, it is so much more difficult to keep track of the status effects in this game. But if you can do that, the game really does benefit from it. Overall, I think the story is good. It's not my favorite Final Fantasy story, but it's definitely a good Final Fantasy story. It's up there. I like it, but it's not my favorite. What I will say is that the game is kind of narrow for too long for my tastes. you're going throughout Yuna's pilgrimage, and you're kind of narrowly on that track until the end of the game, essentially. There really isn't a point of no return until that last save sphere, but when he tells you there's a final showdown with Shin, that's the time when you can do side quests. And there are a ton of them, and I will get to all of the side quests in time, but I feel like that's way too late. I also feel like some of the story aspects are slow, particularly the part where they don't tell Tidus that Yuna is going to die at the end of the pilgrimage, which takes forever to be revealed, right? That is revealed on Beaconell Island, which is, what, like the 6th or 7th location? Something like that? So, although I do like the story, I feel like there are certain aspects of it that can take away from my enjoyment of it. What people usually complain about is the voice acting. I think the voice acting is fine for the time. I think the voice editing is where the problems are. I think the editing is poorly done because, let's face it, it's because it's a dub. It's from the transfer from the Japanese to the English. They didn't cut what appears to be, to me, a longer language. Japanese takes longer to say than English, so there's a lot of delays between what people say in the game. To me, that's not that big of a deal, but I know to other people it is, so I'd be remiss if I didn't include it. One of the things that I have wanted to talk about for a while, but never found the opportunity to, is that as much as Final Fantasy IX is a callback to Final Fantasies 1 through 5, I would say, Final Fantasy X seems to me a callback to Final Fantasy VII. And I think that I get that a lot because not only the main character, when the main character's sprite first appeared on the internet, people were saying that they were remaking Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation 2, and this picture was Cloud, but it turned out to be Tidus. There are some aspects of this game that are reminiscent to Final Fantasy VII, so I'm going to kind of give away some of the plot of Final Fantasy VII in order to talk about the similarities between the two games. So, spoilers if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII coming up for probably the next 5 minutes or so. Well, probably not that long, 3 minutes. So, not only is Tidus reminiscent of Cloud in appearance, but he also has an identity crisis, right? He is not what he thinks he is. And for a protagonist, I think that's kind of an awkward, or not awkward, but unusual thing to have show up. We have the kind of powerful, cool girl character with large breasts in Lulu and Tifa. We kind of have the stereotypical person that hangs out with that girl in Waka and Barrett. Then we have the... oh, hold on. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. So there's like a small little bonus there, but we didn't get too much of the bonus. So let me continue kind of like the Final Fantasy X to Final Fantasy VII parallels. Then you have the quiet, nice woman that is the only one that can save us all in, let's just go to the main screen here, in Yuna, and also in Aerith, or Aerith. Then you have the thief, that's kind of a bubbly person with kind of an underhanded motive that you don't find out until it shows up later. In Yuffie and Riku. Then you have the strong kind of silent character that has a mysterious past that plays directly into what you're doing right now, is ultimately familiar with your main villains in Vincent and Auron. And if you don't see the parallels between Vincent and Auron, feel free to take a look at Vincent's design in Final Fantasy Advent Children. I thought it was Auron for a bit. Then we have the kind of strong silent type that is a protector of the woman that can save us all in Red 13 and Kamari. Is that everybody? I think that's everybody. So, like, the characters to me always seem reminiscent, at least a callback to Final Fantasy VII. The overall plot, I don't think so. Even the characters themselves have different roles in the party and stuff like that. But ultimately, I feel like it's definitely kind of a callback to a formula that they started in Final Fantasy VII. And I've probably spent way too much time on this, so let's go back and talk about this game by itself. This game's graphics, for instance, were phenomenal at the time. I cannot overstate how good they were. This is early PlayStation 2, and I remember some of the reviews of the time were being, well, they sound silly now, but they were being so over the top about it. They were saying that Final Fantasy X had graphics that could not get better. Video games graphics could never get better than Final Fantasy X. I specifically remember hearing that at the time. Granted, it sounded stupid even then, but that shows you how good the graphics were, that people did not think they could be improved upon on the PlayStation 2. And it was early PlayStation 2. The sound is great. The music is amazing. Nobuo Uematsu always does a great job, and this was no exception. The music here is great. Each place was identifiable. I love that. There was something kind of unique about each area. The only other Final Fantasy game that I felt did that as well as this game was Final Fantasy IX. Although this world, they were really close together, right? We're in Guadosalam, and then next thing you know, we exit a cave and we're in the Thunder Plains, and there's nothing similar between the two in my eyes. So it's that kind of stuff would occasionally throw me off, but each place was identifiable. One of my complaints, though, and there aren't many, I love this game, but one of my complaints is that the final boss is too easy. You might have saw that I wasn't always sure what my strategy was going to be going into the final boss. That's because I didn't really need one. He's not that difficult. I would say that the, I believe it's called Overdrive Sin? The one with the Sin with an Overdrive. He is the hardest enemy in the game, usually for me. Maybe Unalesca is also more difficult. Even the Seymour that we fought before Unalesca was more difficult. The final boss is kind of anticlimactic, and then to kind of stretch it out further, we have these anticlimactic battles that you can't lose that took me way too long to get through. I'm reminded once again of Final Fantasy VII, where after the final boss there is kind of another a fight that's supposed to be more emotional, more conclusive on that end than it is actually you saving the world. There's a third fight, a third form, so to speak, but they let you win it with one attack. You know what I mean? And if this game had done that, I felt it would have been better served, but instead I'm stuck fighting these Aeons that I can't hit. We'll get to a point where I can hit them, but then we're up against Yu Yevon, who seems like a legitimate boss fight, but I'm constantly in auto life, so that's never going to let me lose. But ultimately, I love this game. I feel like the gameplay is great. The way that you level has never been my favorite. The sphere grid has never been my favorite. I like it okay. There have been worse ways to level up, but I much prefer the traditional just give me the base stats if you want me to do rolls like that, as opposed to me navigating this gigantic map that is somewhat difficult to understand when you first see it. It takes some practice before you get it. And then having everybody get into a fight is great in concept, but to force me to do that in every fight really starts eating away at time and things like that. That's how in that final dungeon, it took me 2 hours to record 30 minutes of getting through a fight. I only cut 19 battles out, but 19 battles ended up being about an hour and a half, give or take. I think it was a little bit less than that, but it was somewhere around there. That's a lot of time because I kept on trying to bring everybody in so that everybody could get levels, as opposed to giving them like 70% of the credit. If they are not in it, it's either all or nothing, and that kind of bothers me about it. But like I said, the battle system itself was great, and I hope to find a game that brings a battle system from Final Fantasy X forward, but as far as I can tell, it's kind of a one-time thing. They got so much right in this one, and they just kind of abandoned the concept. But I really do like the battle system that is presented here. Everything else, even the sequel, has a spin to it, and the spin is not necessarily a good one. But I love the game. There are a ton of side quests for me to go through. I will be going through them. This game is going to have this Let's Play, I should say, is going to have a ton of bonus videos, and I will talk about all the aspects of those side quests and alternate things that I can do in the bonus videos. When people think of Final Fantasy X, they're usually thinking about the stuff that I'm going to be doing over there in the bonus video. So I hope you guys do look forward to it. That is going to do it for these parts of Let's Play Final Fantasy X. I've been ballerscuba. I've been joined, as always, by our victorious champions of Tidus, Riku, Yuna, Auron, Lulu, Waka, and Kamari. Hope you guys have enjoyed these parts. Hope you have enjoyed this entire Let's Play. Hope you laughed. Hope you learned. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.